You don't seem to be a success as a storyteller.
It's a very difficult thing to tell stories that children can understand and appreciate.
I don't agree with you.
Perhaps you would like to tell them a story? Tell us a story.
Once upon a time,
there was a little girl called Bertha who was extraordinarily good. She did all that she was told, she was always truthful, she kept her clothes clean, ate milk puddings as though they were jam tarts, learned her lessons perfectly, and was polite in her manners.
Was she pretty?
Not as pretty as any of you.
She was so good that she won several medals for obedience, punctuality, and good behavior. No other child in the town where she lived had as many as 3 medals, so everybody knew that she must be an extra good child.
Horribly good.
Everybody talked about her goodness, and the prince of the country got to hear about it, and he said that as she was so very good, she might be allowed once a week to walk in his park, which was just outside the town. It was a beautiful park, and no children were ever allowed.
Sheep in the park?
No, there were no sheep.
But there were lots of little pigs running all over the place.
What color were they?
Black with white faces, white with black spots, black all over, gray with white patches, and some were white all over.
Why weren't there any flowers?
Because the pigs had eaten them all. The gardeners had told the prince that you couldn't have pigs and flowers, so he decided to have pigs and no flowers. There were lots of other delightful things in the park. There were ponds with gold and blue and green fish in them. There were trees with beautiful parrots that said clever things at a moment's notice, and hummingbirds that hummed all the popular tunes of the day. Bertha walked up and down and enjoyed herself immensely, and thought to herself, "If I was not so extraordinarily good, I should not have been allowed to come into this beautiful park and enjoy all that there is to be seen in it." And her 3 medals clinked against one another as she walked and helped to remind her how very good she really was. Just then an enormous wolf came prowling into the park to see if it could catch a fat little pig for its supper.
What color was it?
Mud-colored all over, with a black tongue and pale green eyes that gleamed with unspeakable ferocity. The first thing that it saw in the park was Bertha. Bertha saw the wolf and saw that it was stealing towards her, and she began to wish that she'd never been allowed to come into the park. She ran as hard as she could, and the wolf came after her with huge leaps and bounds. She managed to reach a shrubbery of myrtle bushes, and she hid herself in one of the thickest of the bushes. The wolf came sniffing among the branches, its black tongue lolling out of its mouth, and its pale green eyes glaring with rage. Bertha was terribly frightened and thought to herself, "If I had not been so extraordinarily good, I should have been safe in the town at this moment." However, the scent of the myrtle was so strong that the wolf could not sniff out where Bertha was hiding, and the bushes were so thick that he might have hunted out in them for a long time without catching sight of her, so he thought he might as well go off and catch little pigs instead. Bertha was trembling very much at having the wolf prowling and sniffing so near to her that she clenched onto her trembling medals. The wolf was just moving away when he heard the sound of medals clinking. He dashed into the bush, his pale green eyes gleaming with ferocity and triumph, and dragged Bertha out and devoured her to the last morsel. All that were left of her were her shoes, bits of clothing, and the 3 medals for goodness.
Were any of the little pigs killed?
No, they all escaped.
The story began badly, but it had a beautiful ending.
It was the most beautiful story that I've ever heard. It is the only beautiful story that I've ever heard. A most improper story to tell young children.
Unhappy woman! I kept them quiet for 10 minutes, which is more than you could do.